Okay, so now we're going to be talking about a brief overview of the work-study program, including the program's objectives and outcomes, funding types, federal and state regulations that govern the program, and institutional guidelines that all kind of make sure we're operating within the right boundaries as we're hiring and maintaining this program. So what is work-study? Work-study enables students to earn a portion of their financial aid assistance by working part-time. They work a specified number of hours a week and will be paid through the college's payroll department for those hours, so they get paid just like you and I do. In addition to financial aid and other benefits, work-study employment provides students an opportunity to introduce what may be a lifelong career and networking opportunities that may lead to future employment. It also aims to assist students in meeting educational costs, and to the maximum extent possible, it provides jobs that complement and reinforce the student's educational program or career goals. And in some cases, it opens doors to educational and career goals they had not otherwise considered. To regulate employment conditions, it also aims to make sure that those conditions, including pay, are appropriate and reasonable according to the type of work performed. And a lot of that is going on at the human resources level. So as we're rolling these things out, it's not necessarily something you as a supervisor have to necessarily be concerned with, but just so you understand what these factors are looking like moving forward. So the work-study program, which was originally established by Congress in 1964, is designed to provide financial assistance to students for their educational expenses. And as we mentioned earlier, students gain valuable employment experience while completing their educational goals. Positions are available to students for employment both on and off campus, which we'll talk about a little bit later, with community-based organizations performing work in the public interest. So students here at Front Range work in a variety of areas off campus in addition to the services they provide on campus. For example, we have students working with the city of Longmont. We have some students that are working with the city of Fort Collins. We have students placed in local elementary schools helping with literacy initiatives. So they're doing a lot of really great work that'll help kind of mold those paths as they're moving forward through their careers. So there's a couple different sources of funding that help our students participate in this program. And again, this is not something you're worrying about on the front end as a supervisor, but we're looking at this on the back end in the financial aid office. But just so you understand a little bit about where this comes from. The first is that we get a chunk of money from the federal government, and a chunk of that money has to be used for those community-based initiatives that we talked about. So 7% of that money has to be used towards those initiatives. And at least one student has to be placed in a reading tutoring project performing family literacy activities. So we have more than one, so we're good. Most of our students that are actually working on campus are funded through money that we get from the state of Colorado, through what's known as our Colorado Work-Study program, which is twofold. There's a piece that is a need-based program, and there's a piece that is a non-need-based program. Again, this is not something you should be worrying about on the front end, but just so that you at least understand where this money is coming from. The major difference for most of our students is not something they're going to see. Again, it just happens on the back end in terms of where those funding sources are coming from and making sure that we can keep as many students working as possible. So a little bit about the rules and regulations that govern the program. It is governed by standard employment conditions, so the same employment conditions that you or I are held to, they're held to as well. They can work up to 20 hours per week during the academic year, 28 hours per week during periods of non-enrollment, so Thanksgiving break, winter break if they're eligible, and spring break. Students who are in good standing for financial aid may continue uninterrupted, and that information will be sent to supervisors as it becomes available. Students are paid biweekly, so they submit a timesheet, and every 2 weeks they're paid for those hours. Work-study employees must be paid a wage no less than the current federal minimum wage. Our students are fine. Starting with the fall, students will start at $10.20 an hour. As of January 1st of 2018, Colorado's minimum wage will be $10.20 an hour, so everybody will be along that playing field, and we'll be adjusting those each academic year to make sure we're still staying within those parameters. Student positions cannot replace or displace full-time positions or employees. So if you win the lottery tomorrow, a student can't take your job on Monday. They need to actually fill that position with a full-time employee, since a full-time employee was performing those duties previously. Federal work-study positions, and we use federal and Colorado work-study kind of interchangeably throughout this presentation because we don't treat these funding sources, again, any differently, so we hold all students to the same thresholds for purposes of this discussion. They cannot involve constructing, operating, or maintaining any part of a building used for religious worship or sectarian instruction. So if we were to build a religious house of worship on any of our campuses, couldn't have students working in any capacity in that building that are being paid from work-study funds. Neither a school nor an outside employer that has an agreement with the school may accept or permit the soliciting of any fee or commission as a condition of employment. So essentially the students being paid for those hours, that is their quote-unquote gift. All of their human resources paperwork, including a background check, and new hire forms must be completed prior to a student beginning work. The Fair Labor Standard Act of 1938 prohibits employers, including schools, from accepting voluntary services from any paid work-study employee. So if your student comes in between class and they just want to help out for a little bit, and they don't want to put those hours down, make sure they're writing those hours on their timesheet because they have to be paid for all of the hours that they worked, which kind of ties us into this final bullet point. Students are held to 20 hours per week, but if for some reason they work for 25, they do have to still be paid for all of those hours, but if they continue that behavior, they may not be allowed to continue participating in the